What if I told you that two leaders, one from West Africa, the other from the halls of US Congress, stood before the world and exposed a global secret meant to keep an entire continent silent? What happened next didn't just shake diplomacy, it rewrote the rules of respect. This isn't just a summit, this is the story they hoped you'd never hear. Stay until the end. It changes everything. Dear friends, what you're about to hear is more than just a story. It's a glimpse into a world where quiet courage reshapes destinies and dignity outshines power. These are the voices often missed by the headlines, but not here. If this kind of storytelling moves you, if it stays with you long after the screen fades, we invite you to subscribe and ring the bell. And before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. We read every word. Now let's begin. The air in Nairobi was unusually still, almost anticipatory, as if the city itself was holding its breath. In the shadow of Mount Kenya, at the Kenyatta International Conference Center, a summit, unlike any before, was about to begin. The event was titled Dignity Unbound, and it wasn't hosted by a global superpower, but by two names that had come to symbolize defiance and hope across two continents: President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and US Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. They had called together leaders, young, passionate, often ignored, from all 54 African nations, along with delegates from the African diaspora, activists, technologists, and dreamers. The mission was simple, yet audacious: to reshape the narrative of global innovation, to reclaim Africa's voice in a world that had too long spoken for it. The opening ceremony was unlike any diplomatic spectacle. No parades, no choreographed applause, just a circle of leaders standing shoulder to shoulder beneath a massive hand-woven banner that read, "We are not problems to solve, we are partners to build." As the sun cut through the glass dome, a young scientist from Ethiopia stepped onto the stage. Her voice trembled at first, but her words cracked the room open. "Our ancestors built civilizations. Our children will build technologies, and neither will ask permission." The crowd rose, not because they were told to, but because they could feel history folding into the present. Traoré and Jasmine watched from the front row, unspeaking, deeply moved. For a moment, the summit felt invincible, as if it could withstand anything. But outside those walls, something was already moving. An encrypted message was being uploaded from a satellite phone in Dakar. It contained documents, classified, strategic, meant to remain buried. Someone, somewhere, had decided that this summit was too powerful to be left alone. The rooftop of Africa was about to echo with more than just voices of hope. It was about to be shaken by a truth so sharp it would force every person in that room to decide: keep the peace or confront the storm. It began with a knock on Jasmine Crockett's hotel room door, just past midnight. The hallway of the luxurious hotel in Nairobi's Westlands district was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. A courier handed her a small, sealed envelope. No words, no explanation. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. "They won't stop you, but they're trying to stop the future. Share wisely." She didn't sleep that night. Back at the summit venue, beneath the veneer of celebration and unity, whispers had started circulating. A few delegates had noticed increased security presence. Others spotted diplomats from powerful Western nations making hurried, discreet exits. Something had shifted. Jasmine met with President Ibrahim Traoré in a private side room before the next day's panel. The moment the contents of the flash drive appeared on screen, the temperature in the room dropped. Detailed memos, strategic plans, internal communications, all confirming a coordinated effort by several Western intelligence agencies to sabotage African-led tech independence initiatives under the guise of global cybersecurity stability. The leak made one thing clear. The summit wasn't just being watched, it was being targeted. They sat in silence for a long moment. "If we go public," Jasmine finally said, "we risk derailing everything we've built here. They'll call it conspiracy, say we're stirring division." "And if we stay silent," Traoré replied, eyes steady, "we give them permission." Word of the documents began to circulate among a few trusted delegates. Some urged caution. "We need this summit to succeed," said a representative from Senegal. "Let's not poison the air." But others were furious. "We came here to speak truth. If we're muzzled now, we've already failed," argued a youth activist from Malawi. The question wasn't just strategic, it was moral. The power of the summit had been its transparency, its refusal to follow the old diplomatic scripts. Now it faced its first true test. Was this gathering merely symbolic, or was it prepared to confront power, no matter how uncomfortable? In that moment, on the edge of global attention, Ibrahim Traoré and Jasmine Crockett made their choice. Not to retreat, but to transform the stage into a reckoning. The following morning, the summit's energy had shifted. Delegates gathered in tighter circles, their voices low but intense. Rumors had begun to take shape, transforming into something harder, something real. Ibrahim Traoré and Jasmine Crockett had already made their decision. The only question now was how to deliver it to a world not ready for what they had to say. Instead of a press conference or a dramatic reveal, they created a new forum within the summit, the Truth Session. No cameras, no pre-approved talking points, just raw, unscripted dialogue. Word spread fast. Within hours, hundreds of delegates packed the converted amphitheater, its circular structure echoing voices back toward the center, a fitting design for what was to come. Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward first, dressed simply, no notes in hand. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "We have learned," he began, "that some forces see our unity as a threat. They prefer an Africa divided, not because we are weak, but because we are finally choosing our own path." He didn't name nations, he didn't accuse, he invited reflection. If progress is only welcomed when it serves others, then what name do we give to that control? Then Jasmine took the stage, holding the flash drive in her hand. "We could have buried this," she said, "pretended we never saw it, smiled for the cameras and gone home, congratulating ourselves on a job well done. But if we do that, we betray every young person who came here believing change was possible." Her voice cracked with intensity. "Silence may keep us safe, but it will never set us free." The room was still. Then a young woman from Sierra Leone stood. "My country was once torn apart by war. What kept us going was the truth, even when it hurt. Thank you for not choosing comfort over courage." Others followed. One by one, voices rose, not in anger, but in clarity. They had come to Nairobi seeking solidarity. What they found was something deeper: accountability. The summit was no longer a ceremony. It had become a crucible. Outside, the press waited, unaware that inside those walls, history had just shifted its weight. The morning after the Truth Session, the city of Nairobi woke with a strange stillness, as though something invisible had been lifted or torn. Headlines flooded global news feeds. Africa confronts the West. Summit in Nairobi breaks all diplomatic rules. Opinions raged. Some accused Traoré and Jasmine of orchestrating division. Others called it the most courageous act of political transparency in a generation. But inside the conference halls, the reaction was different, quieter, more personal. Delegates lingered in hallways, no longer discussing deals or partnerships. but what accountability truly meant in a global system built on asymmetry. At the University of Nairobi, students who had been volunteering at the summit organized an impromptu assembly on the campus lawn. They projected clips from the truth session on a screen made of stitched-together bed sheets, inviting community members, professors, even local tech workers to join. That afternoon, the first Code for Dignity workshop was held in Kibera, one of Nairobi's largest informal settlements, where students taught children how to program using solar-powered laptops. It wasn't a photo op, it wasn't symbolic, it was the summit's words turned into action. Jasmine Crockett received thousands of messages from across the globe. A high school teacher in Atlanta wrote, "My students watched your speech. They didn't look at their phones once." An engineer from Brazil offered to donate open-source software to support youth-led tech initiatives in Africa. A single mother from Ghana sent a video message. "You made my daughter believe her ideas matter." Ibrahim Traoré spent that day walking the summit grounds, pausing to speak with small groups of delegates. He made no speeches. He listened. One young inventor from Madagascar told him, "Before this week, I thought dignity was something we earned. Now I see it's something we own." By sunset, something new had begun to crystallize, not a project, not a fund, but a network of belief. That dignity, when protected by courage and guided by truth, could rewrite not just the headlines, but the future. They called it Ubuntu Tech Network, not because it sounded powerful, but because it meant something ancient. I am because we are. The summit had shaken the world. But in the silence that followed, a deeper resonance had begun, not loud, but lasting. 1 year later, under the towering glass dome of the Jakarta Convention Center, President Ibrahim Traoré stood at the podium of the expanded G77 summit. The room was filled with presidents, prime ministers, and delegates from across the global south. But what made this gathering different was not just the geography, it was the mood. There was no sense of deference, no silent submission to a global order written elsewhere. The summit's theme was bold and clear, redesigning the future together. Traoré began not with grand declarations, but with a quiet reminder. What happened in Nairobi was not an outburst, he said. It was a blueprint, and blueprints are not meant to be stored in archives. They are meant to be built upon. He spoke of the Ubuntu Tech Network now operating in 14 countries, where local innovators collaborated across borders without waiting for permission. He spoke of students from Burkina Faso coding alongside teens from South Korea and farmers from Malawi teaching sustainability techniques to rural communities in Colombia. The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was personal. In Washington, Jasmine Crockett had become more than a congresswoman. She had been appointed as a special advisor to the UN's new Council on Equitable Innovation, an initiative born from the Nairobi revelations. She pushed for policies that valued community-based technology, redistributed research funding, and gave the Global South a seat not at the table, but at the head of it. Universities across continents integrated the case of the summit into their curriculum. At Harvard, it was taught under transformative leadership. At Makerere, it was part of Pan-African Futures. At Tsinghua, it was studied under decentralized innovation systems. But what moved the world was not just what was taught, it was how it felt. At the core of every headline, every new initiative, there was a simple principle re-emerging like sunlight after a long eclipse. Respect was no longer a performance. It was a rule, not written in law books but etched into the consciousness of a new generation. As Traoré ended his speech, he looked directly into the camera, broadcasting live across multiple languages. "Dignity," he said, is not something we ask for. It is something we insist on, and from now on, every partnership we form, every future we build, will begin there. In a world often shaped by headlines of conflict and power struggles, the story of Ibrahim Traoré and Jasmine Crockett stands as a living testament to the quiet revolutions that reshape history. What began as a summit in Nairobi, a gathering meant to uplift local innovation and unify voices across the African continent and diaspora, evolved into a global moment of reckoning. It wasn't driven by force or finance, it was powered by truth. When Traoré and Crockett made the choice to expose the hidden efforts of global powers to suppress African-led innovation, they risked everything: alliances, reputation, stability. But in doing so, they activated something far greater, a movement of minds and hearts across the globe. Their courage did not ignite chaos, it ignited clarity. It showed the world what leadership looked like when stripped of performance and rooted in principle. The summit's aftermath proved that transparency, though uncomfortable, could be transformative. From solar-powered coding workshops in Kibera to transcontinental tech exchanges, from university courses built around their values to policy-making at the United Nations, every ripple that followed echoed with the same conviction: dignity is not a gift, it is a birthright. But perhaps the most profound impact was not in policy, but in perception. Africa was no longer framed as a continent waiting for rescue. It was understood as a continent leading its own future. And Jasmine, standing not as a savior but as a sister in struggle, reminded Americans and global citizens alike that real change doesn't come from speaking louder. It comes from listening better. The lesson we take from this story is simple but powerful. When silence becomes complicity, truth becomes the only path forward. Whether you're a teacher in Detroit, an engineer in Lagos, or a student in Jakarta, you have the ability to reshape the spaces around you, not by shouting into the void, but by standing in the storm, with courage, with clarity, with dignity. So now let us hear from you. Quick question for our community. What did President Traoré and Jasmine Crockett choose to do with the leaked documents during the Nairobi summit? A. Keep it secret to maintain diplomatic peace. B. Share it openly to encourage truth and transparency. Drop your answer A or B in the comments below. And now we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think transparency always leads to progress? Or are there times when silence is necessary? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your voice matters. If this story moved you, inspired you, or shifted your thinking even a little, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. Your support gives us the strength to keep uncovering stories that challenge the world and uplift the truth. See you in the next chapter.